Hello once again, and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer. Today is the second of 2 days with Judy Gaman, who is speaking to us about the thesis that she carries that doing less will result in a better quality of life. She talks now about her friend Lucille, who was over 100 years old and had wisdom to pass along.
Lucille, of course, she was nothing short of someone who just exuded life. At 100, most people aren't doing these things even at 40 and 50 that she was doing. Duplicate bridge and had a major social calendar, and we're, most of us are doing those things. But I think that's what had her alive until just shy of her 104th birthday.
Gee, that sounds like my grandmother, who was just short of 103 when she passed away, but she was very busy right up to the last two. But it was mostly with meaningful things, not work, not in the sense of going to work, but actually interacting with people and enjoying being around other people and knowing that they enjoyed having her company in their life as well, and so on and so on.
Well, I'm glad you brought interaction, because that's one thing that is overlooked these days. We use the term friend so loosely.
Yeah.
It's not what it used to be. I mean, people think, if I get likes on Facebook or if people follow me or share my story on Instagram or LinkedIn or you name it, all the platforms, they feel like that's engagement. But they've actually done studies, looked at the brain, and realized that the brain activates much differently when you're in human contact and you're with people and you're having that 3D conversation where you see them in real time versus when you're sitting behind a computer. And we kind of started to see this with a lot of the shelter in place, and people are doing LinkedIn and such. They actually were getting fatigue from LinkedIn. And you may have experienced this, or your listeners may have experienced this. They go from LinkedIn meeting to LinkedIn meeting. They can see themselves in their computer. So not only are you trying to actively listen and actively respond, you're trying to look like you're interested, keep a smile on your face, which is a very natural thing when you're in the presence of someone. It's a very unnatural thing when you're behind the computer.
Yeah, I've noticed some of that sort of thing as a newscaster. One of the things that people do a lot, that I follow a lot as part of my job, are Zoom meetings. And all of these faces on the screen for all the different people who are there, and each one of them at various times seemingly catching themselves being a little bit too blasé, or just a little bit too relaxed, or a little bit too less engaged, or just nodding off or zoning out, as it were, until they suddenly realize that someone's spoken to them, and all at once it's like the red light on the front of a TV camera came on, and they suddenly realized it was their line, and they had to perform accordingly. And I use the word perform advisedly in that context.
Well, I think that's a great word, because that's really what these Zoom meetings are to some degree. They're a bit of a performance. You have to be on task, you have to be present, and you have to at all times be ready to be called upon. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that sentiment. Another thing that I think that we're really getting into with decision fatigue is we don't realize how much our lives have been disrupted, especially in the last a few months in March. Yeah. And we're going on autopilot. When you're on autopilot, you know where you're going to, you know what you're going to do. You generally are going to eat at one of 3 restaurants at lunch, or you kind of have this pattern that you've fallen into. And what it does is it frees up that mental bandwidth we were talking about and allows you to save that energy for important decisions. But when you are sheltering in place, or your schedule's been disrupted, or your hours are different, all these things people are facing, their mental bandwidth is strained, because not only are we having to make decisions for what to do, we're having to make more and more decisions of what not to do. Don't turn on the TV. Don't get distracted and get on social media when you're supposed to be working. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't go outside when you're supposed to be on the clock. And that constant refresher of, what am I supposed to be doing right now, is exhausting, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a lot of people say, why am I so tired? I'm doing less, but I'm way more tired than when I was doing a whole lot more at the office and I was more productive. And that's part of the reason.
Yeah. I remember talking about somebody years ago in a conversation with a third party, and I referred to the party of the second part as a friend. And the third party said, "How much do you really know about them?" And I came up a bit dry, and they said, "That's not a friend, that's an acquaintance. Someone that you could take or leave, not to be thoughtless, but somebody you could take or leave. Whereas someone you've known for a long time, someone you maybe shared secrets with, maybe someone who's confided with you when they had a rough patch on the road or something like that, and you spent a lot of together time over a considered period of time, and they are friends. These other people are simply people that you encounter from time to time. And I've noticed on Facebook, for instance, that an individual may have, quote, many friends, quotes around that, but you may only see regular postings from, as I understand it from reading it someplace, maybe the Wall Street Journal, 15 to 20 people whose material actually gets passed along to you on an active, ongoing basis. In other words, Facebook has decided not to flood you with everything everyone who you are supposedly connected to will post. Only a limit, and even 25 seems like it's a little bit high in that regard to relate to.
My husband and I have 10 kids, and I guarantee that keeping up with our 10 kids and our 5 grandchildren is exhausting. But if we had to keep up with all of our 500-plus Facebook friends or name whatever social media platform you want to, it really creates a whole nother complexity to our lives. Suddenly we're worrying about their issues, we're thinking about them, we're remembering memories. That alone in itself is keeping our brain engaged and taking us maybe off task with something we're trying to get done. I'm a huge fan of lists for this reason. Make a list so that you can help yourself stay on task, because it's so easy to get up and you're thinking in your mind, I want to accomplish this, I want to accomplish that, and putting the list on your computer is not nearly as effective as handwriting it. There's something about that muscle memory and having it right there in front of you at all times on paper. But it's so easy to say, I'm going to get up, I'm going to accomplish this. You don't make that handwritten list, and pretty soon it's 10 o'clock. And you're like, oh, I got to get this list done. And then you log on to the computer, and then you see an email, and you chase after the email. And then all of a sudden you get the little pop-up, oh, you've got a message. And then you go see who liked your thing or who shared your post, or somebody on LinkedIn wants to connect. Oh, they want to have a meeting. So pretty soon you're like, oh, my gosh, now it's 1 o'clock. I don't have anything on my list done. But you haven't written the list down. If you write it down, you're so much more likely to stay on task, close out all those windows. If you close out the windows, you're less likely to get distracted. So allow yourself to simply finish a task. You're going to feel so accomplished, and then move on to the next task. If you feel that nagging need to get on social media or do some of these things, then give yourself a little time window. This is the time that I've earned the time to get on social media, and I'll only be on it from this time to this time. Set an alarm. And we have to start retraining ourselves to be so much more disciplined than how we've been.
For a person who'd like to know more about where your book may be found, and perhaps if you've got an additional contact point of some sort for people to reach out and touch you in some manner, what would those answers be then?
Yeah, so they can go to lovelifelucille.com, lovelifelucille.com. That will bring them to all kinds of information about the book and my bio, and they can even see a clip of Lucille. She was hysterical. And then if they want to learn more about Judy Gaman or about the things we do at Executive Medicine, they can go to emtexas.com.
Thank you very much, Judy. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Pleasure's all mine.
My guest on these 2 days of WIHS Journal broadcast has been Judy Gaman, whose thesis is Enjoy Life More by Doing Less. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from WIHS, Middletown.